It's 5:05 and welcome into a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Well, some good news out of Western North Carolina just one day ahead of President Donald Trump's visit to the state. Significant progress has been made in restoring roads and bridges that were damaged by Hurricane Helene back from late September. This is as the efforts transition from emergency to temporary and permanent repairs. The North Carolina Department of Transportation reported that 1,426 roads were closed after the storm, with 87% of them, over 1,200, reopened by January the 21st. Additionally, 9,307 damaged sites, including 83 bridges and 867 culverts, were identified, as well as approximately 145 bridges expected to require complete and total replacement. Temporary solutions such as gravel roads, pipe-filled fords, and temporary bridges were rapidly implemented to reconnect various communities, with 26 temporary bridges installed in Division 13 for NCDOT. That covers Buncombe, Burke, Madison, McDowell, Mitchell, Rutherford, and Yancey counties, which is primarily where you look at the center of Hurricane Helene's damage and destruction, with all of those bridges, those 26 temporary bridges, all within the first 90 days. NCDOT engineers praise the collaboration efforts of state and external teams, highlighting the quick response and sustained momentum. While winter weather has caused minor deterioration at some temporary repair sites, crews say they have resolved the issue promptly. Now, obviously, one of the big things here, Interstate 40, plans for permanent construction are underway, with some projects set to accelerate in the spring. Those key efforts include restoring highways in affected basins such as Interstate 40 near Pigeon River, as well as US 64-74 through Bat Cave and Chimney Rock. Temporary roads have been established to maintain access, and contracts for permanent rebuilding are currently in progress as we speak this morning. Despite challenges, NCDOT remains committed to completing long-term repairs and ensuring resilient infrastructure for North Carolina communities. According to NCDOT teams, they said, quote, "I am very impressed with the production of NCDOT and consulting engineers, contract crews from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, the Florida DOT Bridge Team, and our central NCDOT teams. Immediately after the storm on September 28th, 29th, and 30th, we only had a general idea of the damage and no idea how long emergency or temporary repairs would take. Looking back now, I am rather impressed with the response and continued momentum we carried through the winter." That's coming out of the NCDOT engineer Tim Anderson, providing that quote to CarolinaJournal.com. We'll keep an eye on those roads and that construction out in the western half of the state. It's now 5:08. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. As we continue to discuss Hurricane Helene relief and recovery out in western North Carolina, a Title VI complaint has been filed against Buncombe County. That, of course, hosts the city of Asheville. To get some additional details on that this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Katie Zender back to the Carolina Journal News Hour this morning. Katie, Title VI violation, what exactly does that mean, and what are some of the details that you're looking at this morning?
Right. Good morning, Nick. So a Title VI violation has to do with racial discrimination in relation to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it's different from a Title IX violation. The Title IX has to do with sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. This has to do with racial discrimination. So basically what's going on in Buncombe County is there has been a complaint filed with the Department of Treasury because the distribution of Hurricane Helene funds are allegedly being prioritized based off of race rather than based off of need. So what's happening here is a complaint was filed by WNC Citizens for Equality, and their complaint alleges that hurricane relief funds were distributed to local businesses impacted by the hurricane, but are being prioritized based off of racial preference rather than by need. The complaint was filed on Wednesday on behalf of local business owners that were impacted by Helene.
Now, Katie, I wish I could sit here this morning with a straight face and tell you that I'm shocked that something like this is going on in Buncombe County, but this is unfortunately probably what many folks wouldn't be surprised to find, that something like this is going on with some of the political makeups and some of the things that we've seen out of not only the city of Asheville, but Buncombe County itself in regards to some things that are politically based, I guess is probably the accurate term to describe it. Not really shocked that maybe something like this is going on.
Right, exactly. So Buncombe County officials have reallocated almost $1.6 million in ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act funds, for a newly created grant program known as the Helene Relief Small Business Grant Program, or it's also known as the Asheville Buncombe Rebuilding Together Grant Fund. The county administered the grant program in partnership with Mountain Biz Works, which is another local nonprofit, and applicants can receive up to $25,000 in grant money to cover the losses incurred. So the complaint that was filed both against Buncombe County and against Mountain Biz Works because, they're both a part of this grant program. And so according to Buncombe County, the grant program would prioritize the Black, Indigenous, and people of color or non-white businesses over white businesses rather than prioritizing businesses based off of need. And you can see that in the article.
Wow.
I've linked to the grant program. Exactly. Yeah.
Katie, that's unbelievable. So they're publicly saying that this is how we're doing our grant program.
Exactly. So you can see it. They're not hiding it at all. I've linked to both the grant program and a screenshot where, it says these are the focus areas that we're focusing on. And their focus areas are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, female-owned businesses, and sole proprietorships. So yes, they're taking a very kind of biased approach to prioritizing these grants.
So I guess with that since they're literally stating that that's what they're doing, we go back to this Title VI violation. Who exactly gets involved in this? Is this a federal lawsuit? Is this a state lawsuit? How does this kind of play out from what you understand?
Right. So I don't have a ton of details yet on how exactly this is going to play out, but this has been filed at the federal level with the Department of Treasury.
Interesting. And with that, obviously, Hurricane Helene relief and recovery continues in the western half of the state. So with this, you've obviously got a lot of businesses that were destroyed and devastated, and some of those rebuilding efforts are taking place. And I guess, Katie, it's accurate to say, it's not reading between the lines. If you are a white individual and you own a small business, you are way down on the bottom of the list in terms of getting some of this relief.
Right, exactly, Nick. And when this grant program was set up back in the fall, Brownie Newman, who is the former county board chair, said supporting small businesses who are working to recover from damage inflicted by Hurricane Helene is vital to our local economy. He told that to a news outlet, a local news outlet, back in the fall. Now, Newman stepped down from his position as chair at the end of October last year, so he is no longer in that position. But during a January 7th update, so just a couple of weeks ago, Mountain Biz Works, in partnership with the county, announced that they awarded 137 grants totaling more than $11,000. 28% of the grants were issued to non-white applicants, but less than 12% of Buncombe County's population is non-white. That's according to a press release from WNC Citizens for Equality. That's who filed the complaint with the Department of Treasury. So I do have a quote here from the president of WNC
Sure.
Citizens for. He said, "People have already been devastated by Helene. To have the county then tell storm victims that they now cannot receive equal treatment for help due to their skin color is just adding injury to insult." And you can read the rest of his quote in the article. But yeah, I also spoke with Ruth Smith. She's a civil rights attorney up in Asheville and Buncombe County area. She said, quote, "The county's actions are a clear violation of Title VI, which forbids entities from using federal funds in any manner that discriminates based on race," said Smith. And you can read the rest of her quote as well.
It's a remarkable story this morning. Katie, thanks for bringing it to us. Katie Zender joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get a look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 5:18. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on a Thursday morning. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We've got a sad update this morning on a story brought to you earlier this week. State Representative Joe John, who is a Wake County Democrat who served the state for decades in a variety of judicial and as well as administrative and legislative roles, has unfortunately died. John, who was 85, had announced his resignation from the House of Representatives here in North Carolina this week, saying that he needed to focus on his health and spend time with his family as he battled a terminal cancer diagnosis. John was a state superior court judge, a state district judge, a judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and the director of the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation's Crime Lab before being elected to the legislature back in 2016. Jack Lewis, a former judge who served with John on the Court of Appeals, described John as utterly dependable, capable, and highly regarded. John's resignation Sunday after representing his Northwestern Wake District for 4 terms and winning re-election in last November. John wrote in his resignation letter, quote, "This decision, though incredibly difficult, is made with the intention of focusing on my health and spending cherished time with my family during this challenging period. The values I hold dear, the integrity, hard work, family, and deep commitment to our community will remain with me as I navigate the next phase of my life. Details about a memorial service for John are not yet immediately available, and Wake County Democrats will choose John's replacement in the House." Governor Josh Stein said in a statement after his resignation, quote, "While his impacts on the lives of North Carolinians will be lasting, his leadership will be sorely missed." So again, this coming in just a couple days rather, after his resignation on Sunday. John was 85 years old and unfortunately lost his battle with terminal cancer. A sad update to a story that we have been tracking over the last couple of days right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:21, News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. The phrase and term birthright citizenship has been in the news a lot over the last couple of days, with the now 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, signing executive orders dealing with that. To get some more details this morning, Donna King, the editor-in-chief over at CarolinaJournal.com, joins us this morning. Donna, you've got an article up specifically dealing with birthright citizenship. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why it's risen to this level of controversy, I guess you would say, on the national stage?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning. So President Donald Trump signed an executive order earlier this week, one of the first actions he took as president, and it's called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. The White House is saying it seeks to clarify the 14th Amendment citizenship clause because it tries to exclude from birthright citizenship individuals that fall under 2 very specific conditions. First, if the mother of the child was unlawfully present in the United States in the first place, and the father was not a U.S. citizen or not a lawful resident at the time of a child's birth, or 2, when the mother was here lawfully, but temporarily, say on a student visa or on a tourist visa, and the father is not a U.S. citizen or here lawfully as well. So this seeks to try and clarify, they say clarify the 14th Amendment. Certainly there's been pushback already, lawsuits being filed. North Carolina's Attorney General Jeff Jackson joined about 17 other states in filing a lawsuit against this. The executive order was set to is not retroactive first, so it wouldn't apply to anybody who is already a U.S. citizen, and it would take effect 30 days from the time it's issued. So this lawsuit says, look, the 14th Amendment is unambiguous and it is for birth on this soil gives you citizenship. So certainly I think we're going to see this play out in court, and it will be a really critical thing to see what justices find in this case.
You know, it's interesting as of course this has risen to the news over the last couple of days. It looks like, Donna, that really the United States is one of the only countries across the entire world that has this birthright citizenship that you're talking about. Trump calls it in some cases birth tourism, where individuals literally come to the country to give birth, knowing for the fact that their child that they just had is going to be getting that U.S. citizenship status. It's pretty remarkable that the U.S. is one of the only countries that operates in that manner.
Right. And it's the birth tourism idea. Certainly, it's had a big impact also on illegal immigration here. That's been a big issue. And critics of it also say that what this really leads to in the long run is what they call chain migration, which means that when that child becomes an adult, they can sponsor relatives for American citizenship. And that's what they say is exploding the population to that degree. So, certainly, the White House is saying, look, this is just the left's resistance, and the Trump administration is ready for court. We're going to take this all the way. Critics are saying that the Trump administration, that Donald Trump has overreached his presidential authority on this one. So I do think that we are going to see legal action pretty soon. But there's also been, you may have seen it on social media, criticism saying, well, Trump's own kids would lose their citizenship, or that Usha Vance would lose her citizenship. It's important to note that, one, this isn't retroactive, so it would not apply to any of those folks. But Trump's children were, his children, and their Czechoslovakian mother was married to him at the time. So they wouldn't fall into this category. So those are the kind of things that I think that there's some misinformation out there that we got to clarify.
Donna, we looked at polling before the election, and border security and immigration was a top issue, not only in polls like ours over at CarolinaJournal.com, but the major national polls from major news networks and newspapers. Is it accurate to say that this is something that the American people are, not this in particular, but immigration as a whole, something that they are frustrated with and maybe need more information on?
I think so. I think that what we're seeing is it's become a catch-all to lots of different problems. One, safety and security, and at the southern border, and we're seeing, the Trump administration moving troops there to help really control the border. And immigration has become a catch-all phrase for lots of different issues. Among them is this idea of birthright citizenship. So this is going to be battled out in court, certainly, but people are also concerned about things like safety and what's happened to the economy over the last 4 years. So we saw the president just jump right into it when he took office on Monday, took 200 executive actions all at once, more than 26 executive orders, most of which, actually one of those executive orders rescinded almost 80 of Biden's executive actions. So we're really seeing this administration jump right in to try and make good on these campaign promises that really captured so much support.
As you just mentioned, this is not retroactive, and I'm seeing in your story that this takes place 30 days from issuance, so 30 days from Monday when Trump signed this in the Oval Office late on Monday night. So in the meantime, I guess this is will go into effect in less than 30 days, unless I guess a court steps in and blocks this from these various lawsuits, including Jeff Jackson here in North Carolina.
That's exactly right. So the next step would be that a court would then act on one of these suits. There's also another lawsuit out there from the American Civil Liberties Union. They filed a suit, and another group of 4 states have filed a suit. So there's going to be a lot going on, and I imagine we will see a stay of some sort during this process, and then it will get hashed out in court. But it's important to note that this isn't just, something happening in California or states along the southern border. This would impact North Carolina. There was a study out last year that found that in North Carolina alone, there's about 142,000 kids where their parents were not in the country illegally. And of those kids that were living with 2 parents, one of which was here illegally, 45% of them had both parents who were not authorized to be in the United States. So this is a very North Carolina issue, just like it is for all the other states.
It's a great update this morning. Donna, where can folks read more details?
Absolutely. Head over to CarolinaJournal.com for all the details.
Donna King joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:28, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get a look at your Thursday morning roadways and update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 5:34. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are streaming live this morning on our YouTube channel as well over at Carolina Journal. If you miss any portion of the program, we encourage you to check out the podcast. It's available wherever you get your shows. Just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour. Tap the subscribe and follow button and take the show with you on demand on your own time. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. One of the big stories that we're tracking this morning is out of Buncombe County, where a Title VI complaint has been filed against them. One for which of course Buncombe County is one of the primary counties in the state that was so heavily impacted by Hurricane Helene back in September. The complaint filed with the U.S. Department of Treasury by the WNC Citizens for Equality alleges that hurricane relief funds distributed to local businesses are being prioritized based on racial preference rather than by need. WNC Citizens for Equality filed the complaint on Wednesday on behalf of local business owners affected by Helene. Dr. Carl Mumpower, who is the president of that group, says, quote, "I'm confident that the Treasury Department will take steps to bring Buncombe County into compliance with anti-discrimination laws. Our citizens deserve to be treated equally regardless of race, and I am optimistic that Buncombe County's administration will agree to do the right thing and stop judging its citizens based on skin color." When Helene hit the area back on September the 27th, Buncombe County was hit with 14 inches of rain in less than 72 hours. As a result, flooding brought widespread devastation to Swannanoa and the French Broad River, triggering extensive landslides and uprooting of trees. Entire storefronts and businesses unfortunately were swept away, leaving residents with their primary source of income gone. Even 4 months into recovery, many businesses remain closed, and debris still lines the streets that once, of course, bustled with activity and business and commerce taking place. Buncombe County officials reallocated almost $1.6 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds for a newly created grant program. This was called the Helene Relief Small Business Grant Program, also known as the Asheville-Buncombe Rebuilding Together Grant Fund. With that, the county administered the grant program in partnership with Mountain BizWorks, which is another local nonprofit. Applicants could receive up to $25,000 in grant money to cover losses incurred from the storm. The complaint has been filed against both Mountain BizWorks and Buncombe County. According to Buncombe County, the grant program would prioritize Black, Indigenous people of color, or non-white businesses over white businesses rather than prioritizing businesses based on their needs. And directly from the website, it claims that it's supporting those BIPOC businesses, women-owned businesses, and sole proprietorships. That is directly from the Small Business Grant Program. You can view that screenshot by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. Here's an additional screenshot from the Title VI complaint. It says, quote, "In order to assist small businesses which suffered economic loss and hardship, Buncombe County and the city of Asheville established the Asheville-Buncombe Rebuilding Together Grant Fund. Hereinafter, Buncombe County funded the program at least in part by reallocating funds received pursuant to the American Rescue Plan, providing approximately $656,000 in initial funding for the Helene Relief Program. Buncombe County later increased this funding amount to $1.5 million, funding the program mostly, if not entirely, by repurposing ARPA funds. Buncombe County then partnered with Mountain BizWorks to administer the program and select individual business owners for funding. Brownie Newman, who was a county commissioner back in Buncombe County when this storm hit the area, said, quote, "Supporting small businesses who are working to recover from the damage inflicted by Hurricane Helene is vital to our local economy." Continued by saying Buncombe County appreciates the opportunity to partner with Mountain BizWorks on this important initiative. Newman stepped down from his position as chair at the end of October. During a January the 7th update, Mountain BizWorks, in partnership with the county, announced that they had awarded 137 grants averaging around $11,500 each. 28% of the grants were issued to non-white applicants, while less than 12% of Buncombe County's population is non-white, according to a press release from WNC Citizens for Equality. Going back to the head of that group, he said, quote, "People have already been devastated by Helene. To have the county tell the storm victims that they now cannot receive equal treatment for help due to their skin color is just adding insult to injury. We should be coming together as a community, but Buncombe County leaders feel it's more important to divide us based on race. It's appalling that It's appalling, rather, that they took this opportunity at this point when people are so desperate for help to make the color of a person's skin a priority in deciding who receives help. Buncombe County leaders should be ashamed of themselves." Ruth Smith, who is a civil rights attorney in Asheville, contends that the county is in fact jeopardizing the entirety of the $1.6 million in federal funds with their actions. Smith told CarolinaJournal.com, quote, "The county's actions are a clear violation of Title VI, which forbids entities from using federal funds in any manner that discriminates based on race. The penalty here could be stiff. Buncombe County could be required to reimburse the federal government of the entire $1.6 million, and that's at a time when the county is broke. They are projecting a $20 million budget shortfall and are already cutting services and staffing. It's beyond stupid to risk what money they do have to push an illegal discrimination agenda." Some pretty strong wording coming in there from a civil rights attorney, Ruth Smith. Buncombe County does have a history on racial equity. It, as part of their Racial Equity Action Plan, that was adopted as part of a 20-year plan back in 2023. They claim that they have a focus on equality and racial equity, and that is a prominent policy for the county. In July of 2022, the Asheville City Council passed a resolution supporting community reparations for individuals in Asheville based on recommendations from county reparation commissioners. The commission had been tasked with determining how to address the legacy of slavery and related injustices. Last year, the Buncombe County school system also offered an internship program for high school seniors, allowing students to spend a semester at a local health institute, which participants received full academic credit for, including honors credit, while working alongside nurses and doctors to explore health care. However, the program initially excluded white and Asian students from participating. Immediately, that's what was going on there. The program has since been amended and open to all races. On Wednesday, the newly inaugurated president and Donald Trump issued executive orders ending all discriminatory programs under diversity, equity, and inclusion for federal agencies, federal contractors, and federal grantees. The order, effective immediately, terminates all DEI-related positions, equity action plans, equality actions, initiatives, programs, grants, and contracts that may be popping up. Going back to attorney Ruth Smith, she told the Carolina Journal, this Title VI complaint was filed last year and the Biden administration decided not to take action on it. We think that with the new administration and the objectives that Trump has set out, Title VI will now be enforced because it's what we were seeing before, with Title VI was only being enforced if it was with non-white victims. The Buncombe County Legal Department, as well as the chair of the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, did not respond to Carolina Journal's request for comment. This is a remarkably shocking story out of Buncombe County, the city of Asheville this morning. You can read it in its entirety and read the lawsuit and some of the priorities for this grant program by visiting our website, CarolinaJournal.com. It's now 5:44, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get another look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thanks, Nick.
It's 5:48. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Don't forget to check out our podcast wherever you get your shows. Just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour, tap the subscribe and or follow button, and take the program with you on demand on your own time. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. You may or may not have heard of the term franchise tax and why that is relevant here in North Carolina. It is a pretty big deal, and to get some additional details on that this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome the CEO of the John Locke Foundation, Donald Bryson, back to the Carolina Journal News Hour this morning. Donald, you have an opinion piece up a couple of days ago talking about the franchise tax. Can you give our audience kind of a brief overview of what a franchise tax is and why it's relevant to citizens here across the state of North Carolina?
Sure. First off, good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on, talk to this audience. It's a great audience. Sure. So a franchise tax is, several states have had it over the years. There's been a trend in recent years of states phasing them out or repealing them entirely. We've seen states like Oklahoma and Connecticut move to get rid of theirs. But other states, some states call it a franchise tax. Some call it a capital stock tax. Either way, it's the same thing. Basically, it is a tax on the value of a company that is doing business in North Carolina. That doesn't mean that they necessarily have a physical location in North Carolina, but if they do business in North Carolina, then they pay the state franchise tax. So it's not a tax on having a franchise type business. You know, if you open up a Chick-fil-A, it's not a special tax for them, or a UPS store or something like that. It's not a special tax for them. It's on basically any business in North Carolina. So any C Corp, or any S Corp, which includes sole proprietorships and LLCs, they pay a minimum $200 tax, but you pay basically on the value of the company that you have over a certain amount of money. And so essentially what the state is doing is that it is taxing the physical investment that companies make in North Carolina.
And why is that an issue? I mean, we've seen massive business growth in the state over the last couple of years. It was just a few years ago that CNBC ranked the state of North Carolina #1 state for business back to back. Why is something like this relevant, and what needs to change in your mind from the General Assembly's standpoint?
Sure. So, a franchise tax is a great example of a tax of we're going to tax somebody for the simple fact that they can afford to be taxed. It's not because it does any good. There's already a privileged licensing fee that the state has put on businesses in the past, and basically to register your business in the state. This is an additional tax, whether you make a profit that year or not, on the value of your company. So think about how big of a footprint that the banks down in Charlotte have, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or even Duke Energy, right? So they have to pay on the value of their company, which is not just about stock value, but it also includes buildings, how many employees they have, how many computers they have, how many warehouses they have, how many vehicles they have. They're paying all of that. But that means that that also applies to, something like Bill's Plumbing up the street. I'm just making up a company, but think about a plumber shop, right? They have to have a warehouse where they have all of this inventory of pipe and ductwork and things like that. They have to have the building itself. They have to have employees. They have to have work vans. They have to have work equipment. And so they're paying taxes on all of that, in addition to any income tax that they have to pay, in addition to any sales tax, in addition to any property tax, and the privileged licensing fee. And so basically, if a company decides to honor the state with opening up and doing business in the state of North Carolina in some capacity, we are taxing them for that, which is even sillier when you think about how much energy the state puts into big incentive programs like JDIG or the One North Carolina Fund to incentivize companies to come here, only to then to tax their investment.
Well, and we've seen in proof, and we've heard rhetoric from Republicans in the General Assembly even as early as yesterday with the swearing in of new members in the House and the Senate about making North Carolina a more friendly place for business and attracting more of that business here, competing with our neighboring states that, as you note, are offering incentive packages, whether it's South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. Do you think this would help in that incentive to states, or in the incentive rather to companies to move their business here to the Tar Heel State?
I think it has to. I mean, most of the 16 states that still do levy a franchise tax are in the South, which means that we would, in fact, have a leg up over them, a tax that we are not levying on these investments that companies want to make in North Carolina if they decide to come here. There's a national trend, as I mentioned earlier, of just getting rid of these taxes altogether. One, the tax itself doesn't make sense, and two, it doesn't bring in relative to the size of the state budget, a ton of revenue. We bring in between 34 and $35 billion a year. I think in the last full fiscal year, it brought in about $770 million, so about 2.2% of all revenue. And it seems to me that this is one of those taxes that actually might pay for itself, where we phase it out, and companies are then able to use that money to invest in more businesses, or invest in more employees. I'm sorry, in wage growth, or more businesses might want to move here. More businesses might want to open up, and so we have more economic activity in that way. The growth may outweigh the revenue that we bring in.
Has this been something that has been discussed or thrown around? We know that there's a lot that moves in the General Assembly every 2 years when they start their long session. Has there been any discussion on this in the past that you're aware of?
There has been discussion on this, and of getting rid of it altogether or phasing it out. It was 2 years ago the General Assembly passed the state budget, and they capped the maximum amount that could be paid by someone in the franchise tax, which it capped at $1 million. Which, if they capped it at $1 million, that tells you that the bulk of it is going to be disproportionately paid by smaller businesses. This is not, large businesses are in fact paying money into the franchise tax, and they were paying a lot more, but now disproportionately, it's the small businesses up and down Main Street that are paying it, rather than the large, C corps.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because in the future, if things stay the way that they are in the General Assembly, we will be moving into having no corporate income tax in the next couple of years, according to some plans from the General Assembly. So it seems like, Donald, on one side, they say, come on, corporations, come on, business, bring it here to the state. And then maybe on the other hand, they're saying, but hey, you're going to have to pay, if you're a large business, at least $1 million a year up to that point in this tax. It's kind of almost maybe a conflicting message.
It absolutely can be a conflicting message. And there are a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, we need a corporate income tax, and we should be, businesses should be paying their fair share. Well, that's true maybe if businesses are in fact people, but they're not people. Businesses don't pay taxes. Businesses pass through taxes. So what we're seeing is they're paying their taxes, but we're seeing it in terms of lower wages, lower employment, or higher prices for whatever product they're providing. And so we're all paying those taxes one way or the other. It's just people on the left or whatever seem to be happier about it showing up on the tax forms of the corporation, but we're all paying those taxes. We may as well just stop acting like they're not passing through the costs and get rid of the taxes altogether, so that we can have higher wages and lower costs.
Donald, you've got some more details in your piece that we don't have a chance to get into this morning. Where can folks check that out?
They can check it out at carolinajournal.com in the opinion section. I talk about how ending the franchise tax here in North Carolina could spur economic growth.
Donald Bryson joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. And we appreciate Donald's time. One of the things that we're going to be tracking as we head into your Friday is the high-stakes race for North Carolina's Supreme Court. We continue to follow legal challenges that are being brought forward by Republican Jefferson Griffin in his race against the current incumbent Democrat sitting in that seat, Allison Riggs. Tomorrow is the deadline for additional court filings to be filed here in North Carolina. Potentially some movement on that today. We'll be tracking that and pass along those details either tomorrow morning or Monday right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We are back tomorrow morning 5 to 6 right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.